This is Nothing Explained, and hopefully over the course of this podcast, nothing will be explained. In the course of explaining nothing, I can absolutely guarantee you that nothing I have to say is important, true, or real, unless it is, but what I wouldn't know. But I do not give legal advice. I do not give medical advice. And I certainly don't take myself seriously. Joining me in chair number 2, Ryan Foo.
The one and only. Well, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like making some pretty awful conclusions there. So
yeah.
Not awful, but I'm
the only Ryan Andrew Shapiro Foo.
Ryan Andrew.
There's no way there's another Irish, Chinese.
That's got a nice ring to it.
Jewish backgrounded Asian Taoist. I don't know. I think I'm the only and only. But you're the only Sampson that I know. Yeah,
and I am actually Stephen Gregory Sampson.
Mm-hmm. But Sampson's way cooler.
Yeah. I actually had this discussion this morning because there's the little coffee shop. Shout out to the local spot, Bucci.
Bucci.
Yeah, actually, that's the place to get coffee, honestly. It's as far as closeness and time of waiting.
Bucci, is that like Japanese? What is that?
No, it's Cuban. So they do like panini press sandwiches, and they have a Cuban sandwich I haven't had yet. But I just go and you get a little smashed breakfast sandwich and a cup of coffee. And if you order the coffee like as is off the menu, it comes with so much sugar, which is apparently a Miami thing. We talked about that today too. So, because I was like, you think this is a thing in Cuba? And he's like, no, it doesn't really, because he spent some time there, the guy who was working behind the counter. And then he got to thinking about it, and he's like, oh, you know what? It's probably a Miami thing. Because, like, you take the Cuban culture and they put it in Miami, and it was like, for whatever reason, it's so much tastier and better. And I think the sugar's coming out of Miami. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because, in Miami, you had time to explore the culinary aspects of your culture, whereas in Cuba, you were probably a little busy.
You were shut down in 1950-something.
Yeah, you're trying to just survive because the United States has embargoed you.
Yeah, that's fun. But, they've got the best car mechanics in the world for that reason.
They have the best doctors and the highest literacy rate. Cuba's on point. Then there's a really interesting documentary about when Cuba got taken out, politically.
Yeah.
They forced them into this whole situation. It was done by these people who do peak oil scientists who are saying that we're running out of oil, which discoveries are definitely way down. Our production has not quite. We haven't seen a dip in production yet, but demand is down right now too, so that could be stretched out even further. Nonetheless, Cuba got cut off from the world oil energy supply. They got bombed back into the Stone Age with paper instead of actual bombs.
With trade embargoes.
So they had to figure out what the fuck are we going to do? And they have some of the best organic farming on the planet because they can't have non-organic farming because non-organic farming is energy-based, petroleum-based. Like all fertilizer is petroleum. Wow. So they have some of the best fertilizers. They couldn't, technology was very limited. You couldn't do a lot of trading. So all doctors, education, and stuff a lot of stuff went through the roof there. They're still not, they're not first world by any measure, but they are living very independently on a, for countrywide.
And in the modern day, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are if in case of emergency, honestly, if the whole world had some sort of major catastrophe, Cuba is one of those places where you're like, well, I want to be there because they're 50 years ahead of disaster planning.
Yeah. But ironically, being 50 years behind puts you 50 years ahead in a certain way, right? Because they were embargoed, it created all of these skills that you could say are more, I don't want to use the word primitive, but that are more ancient. And maybe all the new technology and stuff seems to be taking skills away from us because there's all this stuff we have to rely on, not the opposite.
Yeah.
So if the technology goes away, it's maybe not such a great thing that you can type at 70 words per minute.
They've had a return to their roots.
Yeah.
Which is a perfectly good segue. First off, I do want to give a shout out to our wonderful hosts, the Ghost House. Those of you watching on YouTube can now see their website. Fancy, right?
Beautiful.
We are in a beautiful space, and that would explain why it looks and sounds so good. So, Big up to Ghost House.
Big ups.
We did this week. We have decided that we were talking about revolution.
That's right.
This is hour number 2 of Ryan and I's little project. Hour number 1 is called Illuminati. It's probably linked here if we're doing our job correctly. And we would highly, highly suggest you watch that instead of this because we had an amazing guest.
Not that instead of this. No, I'm not going to let you get away with that bit of comedic self-deprivation. I think it was crazy. So yeah, definitely go watch it. It was great.
Yeah, will you shout him out again?
Theo Wilson. Yeah. He's Lucifury. You can find him at Lucifury on Twitter and on Facebook. He's Theo Wilson. I'm sure you know how that's spelled. I don't have to spell it for you. But he's great. He's a slam poet. He's an activist. He's I don't know. I don't think I bet you he'd be like,
he's
no, I don't
smart
like
as
the word.
fuck. That's what he is.
Yeah, he's fucking
that dude has been
high IQ, high EQ.
You know, that was an interesting, man, listening to him talk was really interesting for me because I kind of come from the exact opposite. Like when I hear him speak, like he's a man who has experienced life, you know?
Yeah.
And like I sit and I feel like I'm in the shadow of a giant because my life has been easy peasy, dude. I've been on easy street since day one. He was talking about, you know, like, traumas coming up and him having that, whatever that conflict was with the police that obviously didn't go very well. And I was just sitting there just being like, I can't draw on any of that experience, you know? Like I say these things about like what it is to process trauma and stuff, and I am speculating completely. Yeah. The best I could do is read from some sort of scientific paper.
Yeah, and not that kind of trauma.
Yeah. Mm-mm. You know, you know, people could call me out for any situation in that regard, and I would have to be like, you got me on that, man, because I don't know. Right. I'm the last person on this planet who has any experience with any of that. That's
particularly how I feel about like sexism and things like that. Like if I say something and someone says like, a woman in particular, if a woman or someone who sees from the female perspective says, oh, that's something you did, they sort of check me for that. I have to listen to them and I have to hear them because I don't have access to that experience of being a woman. Right. Similarly, that if I told them like, don't put societal bonds of masculinity on me, like you're supposed to look like that. Similarly, I should say, no, you don't know what it's like to be a man. I can be whatever the fuck I want. So you have to listen to people who don't have your experience. And when that becomes clear on like a resonant spiritual level, I didn't have anything to say. I don't know. It was impactful for me.
I have a quote on one of a bio page of mine that says the first step to walking in another person's shoes is not being creeped out by feet.
Nice.
You know, and I think it's funny because that's a big thing for people's feet. You know, like how many people out there do you think would just put on someone else's shoes without questioning it? Actually, I have another story too. I was at the park yesterday, and the bathrooms were like 150 yards or something away, and I went barefoot. And I was walking back, and this dude on the bench was just like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And I was like, it was like very friendly, and I was like, "Oh, good, happy day to you, sir." And he goes, "You're not wearing any shoes," and he looked really concerned, you know. And I was like, "I know, it's such a beautiful day."
Yeah.
And I just want to be like, I wanted to say I'm enjoying it, you know. He might not have even understood where I was going with it because it was a non-linear thing that came out of my mouth, but I think I'm assuming that his was like, well, what about all the hypodermic needles or something, you know? And I just, in my head, I imagine like this, imagine like a camera over the top of the park, and there's this time lapse of all the people coming, and they unpack and they play, and right next to their blanket, they're perfectly comfortable taking their shoes off, but they don't want to venture outside of their blanket area without their shoes on. So, I'm leaving home, I have to put shoes on, so they cross the park. But in my head, I'm like, every square foot of this park has been someone else's home, and they felt comfortable taking their shoes off at that particular place in the park.
Wow,
so why should I not be comfortable walking shoeless?
Your mind
across
actually
all
did
of those
that?
places?
All of that?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I'm an analytical person. I justify my existence to a T. Like I don't see. This is the whole thing. Like this is why I struggle to meditate, because in my head I'm working out all the logical conclusions instead of pondering the illogical ones. And the most illogical thing in the world would be to not think at all.
Yes. I mean, in a way, I think logic can get you there. I don't think it's necessary to use logic to get there. I would argue you're already in a place where logic is not. But, that's back to the nothing explaining part. I don't think any of that matters. I think it's hard to relate to people. And that says a lot about what the spiritual journey of being human is. Right? That like a lot of being human is just meeting other people and thinking like, oh my God, I have no idea what it's like to be them. But at the same time, like I do, I know what it's like to be human, you know? So I know what it would be like to be them, kind of. You can imagine it, right? And that's what creates this beautiful sense of empathy. And people like Theo, there's lots of other people I've met in my life. My friend's mom is actually, was an activist for Indigenous rights. And most people don't know, but it used to be really, really frowned upon. It used to be illegal to burn sage or do.
I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
In like 1970, 1980, it was illegal to burn sage. For a long time it was, because the indigenous community has been deeply oppressed. I think it might have been the 60s. Someone check me on that. But it's definitely pretty recent. And she was an activist. And COINTELPRO infiltrated her activist group And I hope it's okay. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm sure she's fine with me sharing it because the CIA and the FBI are all jerks. Anyway, they infiltrated her thing. And this is what I thought about during Theo's thing. And I had the same reaction to him as I did to her telling me this story, which was that they infiltrated her group. And if you don't know what COINTELPRO was, it was a program by FBI, right?
Mm-hmm.
That infiltrated activist groups and organizations and dismantled them from the inside. And this is one way they did it. They came up that there was a mole in the group. I think they even knew it was like COINTELPRO, like that word had been floating around. So this is meta too. But they knew someone COINTELPRO was in the group, and so it sort of got outed that maybe it was this guy who they all just found out was cheating on his wife with another girl who was in the group, and she had old ties to a government, something like that, right? And the guy who put it forward was like, I don't want to break our group apart, but this is something we have to deal with, or it's going to become moles and agents and stuff are going to keep getting in. So they out those people. Like, I think one of them commits suicide or something really tragic like that. The whole thing breaks up. It turns out the leader, the guy who like outed the first two, was the COINTELPRO agent. So like her story about that just made me think like, oh fuck, like I read about this online. I've read the whole COINTELPRO declassified documents, but I didn't live it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't live it. What the fuck do I have? What authority do I have to say shit about someone who went through that and like saw their friends die, and like it's the psychological warfare that was waged on them? It makes me take a second and think like, wow, I'm lucky. I'm very lucky to be sitting here in this very nice place with these nice microphones in front of this nice camera, waving to these nice folks. But it's humbling. It's deeply humbling.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's a good point, because you can't get caught off guard, or you can't be too deep in your own shit, basically, right, and not ignore the people around you. And that's in that same part of you not getting caught up in yourself is to seek out other people's opinions and other places and stuff. And that's when you like a person who is well traveled, travel's not just physical, it is also experiential, like the personalities you have met and the opinions you have taken within you and processed.
Yes, not just worldly, but otherworldly.
Yeah.
In literal and
take
metaphorical
it to
senses.
The next level.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I had a thought in there, but I can't exactly.
It's okay. Those things are stupid.
So, we have been speaking about revolution today, and there's a bunch of little spin-offs in my head where I was like, oh, that would be that would be really interesting, but hopefully those things will come back around. I did want to share one quick story. So we'll look up here at the oh, I did that wrong. Oh, that's because, where are you?
I'm excited. I'm looking at images that are on. Now you guys are also seeing these images. I have no idea where he's going, because I do yoga.
Well,
I like yoga.
I do Kundalini yoga on Sundays.
How long have you done yoga every Sunday?
No, I've been skipping a lot because Saturday night is a great night to go out and hang out with the friends, and it can be kind of get up in the morning. And then the podcast is right after yoga, so I've had to be. Last week I had to get some shit together. Gotcha. And I'm only bringing this up just for personal anecdote to enjoy the day, but I have done yoga like 25 times, maybe, Kundalini yoga.
It's good stuff.
It's probably been about 6 months, I guess.
That's pretty good, 25 in 6 months.
Well, it's about 6 months I've been going, so I'm gonna.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
When I said the math, I was like, I've probably only been like 13 to 15 times. So I've missed 10, but nonetheless, you show up and it's kind of this amalgamation of people.
Okay.
And sometimes it'll be like 3 or 4 of us, and then like randomly there'll be like a big day, and sometimes there's new people. It's a standard situation, but Kundalini is specific in its own way because it is the yoga of the Sikh religion. So and it's an interesting form of religion because they're very like unattached Buddhist kind of like spiritual belief set.
It's an Islamic.
Essentially they their religion is that if you practice this behavior set, you will see personal benefit in yourself. It's not like there's no persecution for you.
No heaven, no hell.
Well, yeah, and it's not like when the guy sits up at the top of the place, he's like, you have to do this. He's like, I'm suggesting you do this. If you do, you do. If you don't, I don't. What the fuck, But as it comes with it, for the people who can see on screen or what they're looking at right now, you can see a very conformist thing going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's not normally what I walk into class. But today I walked into this, like, this is exactly what it looked like when I walked in. Well, like, they were all milling around because they'd finished their morning thing. But there was a major workshop for people who are deep into Kundalini going on. Yeah. And they just take a break from the workshop and they host the class that would normally happen during that time of day. You know, there's probably 4 or 5 times this will happen. So it's interesting for all these people who have been hanging out with each other all day. Suddenly they're commenting on you. Oh, hey, welcome in. And you're like, well, this is new. Why are you guys, why is there so much conformity in the room today? Because like the white is a spiritual meaning for them, you know, like they're they derive higher spiritual performance.
Yes,
from their outfit.
Yeah,
you're
such an analytical bastard.
And that's why. I mean, I've asked about it. You know, like what's the deal with that, and what's the deal? Why do they have beards and things? And
I think there's something to the white. I'll be honest with you. I am slowly training some spiritual muscles that whatever. Wearing white is a good thing that has effects physically in terms of the way that it reflects light. And that alone to me is proof that like looking pretty or wearing the right colors or colors in ceremony in particular.
Yeah, that's big.
Seeming sort of like silly. They're not silly. They're very purposeful. And it used to be that when I heard like red is for anger and it's like the color of your heart, and it means a lot more than what that it appears to be.
The heart chakra is actually green. I
know, but like that like your blood is red, and so it's like your most primal. Yeah. So you're right, that would be root chakra, but still, like it's not. I'm not talking about a specific ideology. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the metaphor itself. That how things appear to be are also are always a metaphor. So like nothing is by accident. Not the colors, not the angle, and I think that's why everything can be so conspiratorial, because there is a greater matrix. There is a greater structure to things, but it's a pretty tricky one. You know, I don't think it's not scientifically.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Even if it's just your belief system, it's not hard at all to go looking for things that completely negate the popular theory of reality.
Yeah,
you know, and yet. It's not hard at all to go and find those things, like the experience of I wore white and I had a better day, and I wore white again the next day and I had a better day, you know, and then I started keeping track and I figured out over the last 5 years, you know, like you could do that if you wanted.
You could, yeah.
And you know, you'd probably be deriving more of that from yourself than you would be from the actual white, you know, like the placebo effect, so to speak.
Who knows?
But
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
But you quickly get results that are not scientifically reproducible. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are scientifically reproducible, but they're not scientifically publishable because that's not science that you're doing.
Yeah,
you know,
it's not
because it's personal. It's still anecdotal. You could do you could have 1,000 success stories, and it's not science because it's personal anecdote,
and because it can't be studied in that way.
Yeah.
Or if you do study it, it turns out something else is happening when you do. But the process of studying it might alter it. For those of you who might consider reality be a little more slippery than it seems like it is. But I would also say even that's a little bit of a delusion. I mean, reality is exactly what it appears to be. I would say that's my gripe with science, is that there are some people who use science to make it what it is not appearing to be, and it certainly is. But what it appears to be is a metaphor for something else. And if you don't get that part, then the rest of the conversation is confusing, very confusing. Anyway, you wanted to talk about revolution in your own Nothing Explained kind of facet.
Yeah, well, as we mentioned in the first hour, like revolution is this.
I'm sorry, hold on. Is that it? Your samurai shirt is awesome.
This is.
It looks like
Japanese Iron Man.
That's what I was about to say. Is it Iron Man?
My buddy printed this shirt. So
really?
He's a local artist.
Oh, see, this would be the perfect time to be like.
We'll go big for the TV here.
Nice. Look at that. It looks great. And we are the WeAreDenver collective. This is 2 folks from Denver sitting down and talking. So this would be a great opportunity. If we had it together.
And we are artists.
But I meant to shop your friend who's on the shirt. What's his name? And where can
this is my buddy Basil. His t-shirt company is called Zero Gauge Ink. It's just what he does on the side.
Still. Go check out
He's
Zero
a very
Gauge.
talented graphic artist.
That's tight.
Extremely talented. He's one of the smarter guys I know, too. He can, he speaks 5 languages, and he speed reads. He's one of those guys that, and, we talk about stuff, you know? I'm like, hey, did you see this? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, did you watch that? He's like, yeah. You know, it's hard for me to keep up with him, and he has a kid. And after I've been working for him for like maybe about a year, I was finally just like, you don't sleep, do you? And he's like, 2 or 3 hours a night. I was like, I knew it. I was like,
that can't be good for you.
Yeah, I've been observing him, this person. He and I have similar interests, you know, so I'm cataloging what it is he knows. And I'm in my head, I'm adding it all up. I'm like, this is an intense amount of shit. Where is he getting the time for this? And I was like, he must be kicking out the sleep. And I finally got up the guts to be like, do you sleep? And he was like, no. And I was like, I knew it.
I couldn't ever imagine living a life like that. I have to spend most of my day in silence. That's just that to.
I don't see, like I'm not. The reason I'm being quiet is because I'm imagining you in a quiet space, and I don't see it. I mean, I know you make quiet spaces, but all you do is talk to people all day.
Yeah, I do talk to people a lot. I do like talking. It is certainly my greatest asset and my greatest obstacle, like egoically. But talking externally is a form of expression. I'm not hearing thoughts in my head before I express them. You see?
Yeah.
So speaking is not actually a phenomenon of thinking. It's not like the byproduct of thinking. It's a totally separate thing. So really, it's pretty.
Thoughts are a stream of consciousness, and speaking is a stream of consciousness, and the two can be kind of crossed, I think.
I don't think they're the same at all. Speaking is an expression of an internal phenomenon. It is not a stream of consciousness. It is a way to try and describe a feeling. Thinking is doing that in your own head about words which aren't feelings. They're like intellectual concepts. So I would say thinking is intellectual. Speaking is actually a very emotional matter. Mm-hmm.
I see. I would argue that speaking is a stream of consciousness, but I do know the division that you're making. Yeah. I would have a hard time being convinced that it's not some form of consciousness that's being streamed out of your mouth, but
all things are consciousness.
Yeah, that was my thing.
But I'm just saying, thinking maybe is less consciousness actually than speaking, and also it's still inside of me right now. But even though I'm speaking, but no, when I around the world, because I am this person, I'm this very like extemporaneous, talk a lot, let's get it done, entrepreneur kind of person. I have to be still or I die. I just burn through my form, so I have to spend as much of my day as I can.
What would you say percentage-wise?
If it's not 25%, I'm done at the end of the day.
And that's on top of sleep.
Oh yeah,
I kind of have that too. I mean, I tend to waste my quiet time, but it's me just basically like letting someone else do the thinking for me. That's the way I put that in my, like watching a screen of some sort, like having a movie play or something. Just where it's like I'm not moving, I'm not engaging in any sort of mental work. I'm just...
That is good, yeah. Relaxing. You're relaxing. You're listening, you could say. But the weird thing is there's like a listening magic. And I'm not sure if it's good or bad for you to lose yourself. You know when like you watch a movie, there's a certain point where you're gone for a second and you are the movie, or you are the observation of it. I'm not sure if that's good for you. I don't know. I don't know. It could be good for you.
That was a hallmark of my childhood, actually.
Just disappearing into the tube.
I would hear my name and I would turn and be like, what? And they'd be like, that was the 7th time I said your name. And I was like, okay. I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
I wasn't here to hear my name.
Exactly.
So how do you can't be mad at me for not being here. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know who you're mad at, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I wasn't here.
I'll work on that. It could be tough because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Or who's supposed to work on it.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, we were doing revolutions and stuff today.
Oh, yeah.
And I always wanted to talk about kind of like from revolution to evolution, because I believe that we should evolve rather than revolve.
Ooh.
But there's kind of a couple of things. So I'll lay out a couple of the thoughts I had, and so you can help me work us back into it. But I did want to think about, we mentioned indigenous culture earlier, and they had some amazing earth-based technologies. Like if you do your research with regard to what the place was like and not what you were taught it was like when they got here. One, there was a shit ton of humans. So that whole genocide.
300 million.
Oh, I would have...
Or 100 million. I'm sorry, 100 million, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was at least 100 million.
Yeah, I think the conservative estimate that you get publicly is like 18 million or something. But either way, it was a very populous continent, top to bottom.
Can we look that up since that's part of the thing? Sorry, I like facts.
No, that's fine.
But keep going. I wish I could look it up for you.
Was that the North American indigenous...
population before Europeans. Colonialism.
What, rates, numbers?
Yeah, just type that in and see what that gets. We're getting... Can we give them the screen? That's currently... Yeah, historic.
Population history. Let's see what Wikipedia thinks.
Oh God. It says. Up at the top, it already said. I saw it.
Oh, hang on. Sorry. Let's cue the people in here.
Let's cue the people in and scroll to the top because I already saw the answer we're looking for. It says most scholars writing at the end of the 19th century estimate that blah 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 blah. The pre-Columbian population was as low as 10 million. But most 20th century scholars actually said a middle estimate of 50 million, with some historians arguing for an estimate of 100 million or more. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. And I would argue that any evidence of them having been a lot of people would have been destroyed. So factually, you should err on the side of believing there were probably more, since that's something they actively tried to hide and that can be proved.
Yeah, given their relationship with the truth, we should assume that it's quite a bit bigger than
right. Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, and along with that, part of that distorted truth was there are lots of stories, personal journals of scholars and stuff coming here and hanging out. And that's another good point too. There are a lot of people who came to North America before Christopher Columbus, like a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
including
hidden fact.
Amerigo Vespucci, by which the continent is named after.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why it's America.
There's lots of evidence of the Celtic people being here.
Mm-hmm. Vikings, definitely.
And Vikings, for sure. So, and like deep into the continent, by the way. There's like a bunch of Celtic ruins in Kansas.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, the place was apparently an Eden, you know? It was so bountiful and plentiful that it was mind-boggling to these people who were coming here and they were seeing this thing, you know? So they really had to squash this kind of situation that was happening over here and the idea of what was happening back in the day.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if what they really did wasn't even actually conquest, but just sort of fucked it up. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the full genocide wasn't actually cold-blooded, like, we're just come over here and murder everybody. Maybe they really tried to integrate, but, like, spiritually failed so miserably that they they got sort of shunned, and so their response was violence.
Like that one guy who shows up to the party and, like, without even trying, just kind of flubs the whole situation.
Yep. So, and then kills everybody with a machine gun. Anyway, that would be the proper metaphor for this really ridiculous story. But this is true. What were you saying about before we got into the population exactly?
I was talking about the fact that it was kind of an Eden,
right.
And in that regard, there is quite a bit of evidence to suggest that they had created a very sustainable, really epic, nice place to live. And one of the things, that was one of the early kind of notions into myself, was this, the 40-hour work week, and we barely work at all, you know, so I'm so glad we got out of the fields or out of nature, you know, into where we can, like, relax and be industrial civilization, you know. But looking at the evidence and, like, actually getting your hands in the dirt helps a lot too. But you start to see, like, this relationship you can develop with the earth, and you can create these systems, and, like, what you put in gets returned back to you tenfold, you know. And I started to see, like, I'm going to question that thesis that we work less. You know?
That's a good point.
That was pretty early on for me, where I was just like, I'm not sure if I can really believe that. I really want to look into that. And the more I do, the less convinced I am that, like, I realize, you know, like, the idea of a stone-aged man, that was definitely a struggle. But we're talking about, like, actual civilized people with real belief systems and real practices, and they inhabited two entire continents, north and south, top to bottom, massive cities on both.
Connected senses of culture throughout the course of it. Not all the same, but, you know, connected.
And, you know, these are the people that presumably, like, basically made up for that big chunk of, like, the 250,000 years, 150,000, you know, of what it was considered modern human. And it's essentially portrayed as hunter-gatherer, but that paradigm is about to be blasted apart. Like,
it's more
any
like
minute
Paradis.
now. Anyone who's paying attention to even slightly, it's not even fringe, in my opinion, but what would be considered fringe architecture, you're well aware that the paradigm is shifting. Like, everything is different now.
Do you think that's... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the reason we're bringing that up is this idea that we could revolve and go back
exactly
to this, and the chances of us getting killed off, you know, the chances of us blowing ourselves up goes back to zero because there are no bombs, right? Yeah. So that is an option, right? But what about the option of evolving into something new, and we can take what they did that was good, and we can keep the internet.
I love it. Yeah. No, I feel you.
That's how I want to.
That's exactly how I feel about it.
I want to be a Native American, but I still want the internet.
Yeah, I definitely want to. The word Indian just refers to being indigenous, so that's the original use of the word. But I think everyone is indigenous. That's like something to really consider as a mindfuck spell casting. That you'd say, oh, I'm not indigenous. That's a Native American. They're indigenous. You're indigenous to somewhere.
Yeah.
You're a human. Like, you were born through nature. Stuff evolved to become what you call you. So, like, and that goes back to the thing we said in the first podcast, which is people really feel like aliens dropped them off on Earth. And they're totally disconnected from nature and science. And
that's an unfortunate place to be.
Yeah.
Because, sorry, I just made a mistake on the video for those of you watching.
It's okay.
Distracted me.
Shit happens.
That's an unfortunate thing to be, because why not both?
Yeah.
You know,
that's the evolution you're talking about.
For one thing, in this the grand scheme of things, of like this potential, what I would say, like yours and mine's kind of shared worldview of like the magic that is the underlying math, you know, rainbow heart math of the universe.
Yeah.
The shit that's really running, you know, the rules that was set forward, the shape of the racetrack we were all racing around, kind of.
I like all of those metaphors.
Yeah, like there is. Crap! I totally lost it.
It's okay.
We were talking about.
You're saying that I don't know. It's not the same. The systems and the things that rule us, the cycle, the revolution is not the same. That something else is growing out of it. It's going to evolve into some other kind of.
Yeah, I was touching on the why not both, which kind of went back to like, let's be indigenous but have the internet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know, but that sounds nice.
Let's. We're gonna go up to the screen here. So, in terms of revolution. I'm just going to scroll through. This is Wikipedia, and we're going to scroll through the list of revolutions and rebellions. And if you're listening on audio, that's about 25 in the BC, the first century. So we're looking about 40. And then halfway through the second century is another 30.
There's a lot. The point he's making is there's a lot of revolution.
It's pretty ridiculous.
There's constantly revolutions all over. And they don't tell you, but all around the world. And at some point, he's scrolling through the 1860s. At some point, the FBI and CIA get developed. Keep going.
Yeah, let's go find a CIA-sponsored.
Let's see what happens after. Who's responsible?
So that'd have to be in the 40s.
Yeah.
And that'd be pre-CIA, but those people would still be operating before they even had a name.
Mm-hmm.
Greek Civil War. We're in the now.
So at this point,
in the 40s.
if you're looking at all this, and you ever heard someone who you thought was crazy who said the CIA is just a way to prevent revolutions in other countries that we already control economically, then look through this menu of all the revolutions that have happened and tell me that there's at least not a giant benefit to using this to your advantage. Isn't it like obvious that this is something if you knew that all around the world people were revolting and creating new societies all the time, that's something you'd want to take advantage of. I mean, they sell water to us. You think they'd sell air to us if they could? You think they didn't take advantage of selling revolutions?
This is I just scrolling here. Have you ever heard of the opposition to the United States involvement in Vietnam is called the Days of Rage?
I have.
That is an incredible set of words that they've strung
the
together
Days
there.
Of Rage, yeah.
Which is weird because it's probably
the most peaceful.
The lack of rage in this situation is probably notable.
Yeah.
Compared to many
The Days of Rage demonstration were direct actions taken over 3 days in Chicago, organized by the Weatherman faction, a counterculture era group.
That brings it to the future.
In Students for a Democratic Society. They sound very violent. The group planned the October 8 to 11 event as national action, blah, 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 bring the war home, advocacy of direct action political strategy. But what did they do? What was their direct action? They bombed somebody? What was their Days of Rage? They didn't do that. I know they didn't. But I'm not positive. Here we go. Events. Despite efforts to recruit, they faced 2,000 police officers. No more than 300 were left willing to face the enormous gathering of police a second time around. So they just whooped their ass for 3 days. That's not... So the policemen whooped the shit out of protesters 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
That's the Days of Rage.
But the Weather Underground was run by that one guy that came up during the Obama administration. I wish I could just like snap this stuff out of my brain, but that's kind of an interesting little side.
Yeah, so we're back to the screen of revolutions. Just in the 90s, like 25, 2000s, there's a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see kind of this exponential expansion. Because now we're down to like, what, by the decade?
You're right, before it was...
We're scrolling centuries, and then we were scrolling half centuries.
Yeah, but that's also because we don't have all the history. We don't have the facts
and there's
the
more people. But it's also interesting to
that's
hear...
a good point.
We're looking at this, and it's pretty easy to draw this conclusion that... we've gotten worse at government.
No, we've gotten better at making money off of chaos. I think that this is a sign that government would naturally be getting better, but it's being harnessed in a way that prevents that. That would be my opinion. But what's that worth?
Well, the people certainly aren't happy. If they're truly popular revolutions.
You're right. It depends on how you define like better. But I'm just saying from their sense of better, they're gotten better at controlling stuff.
Yeah, I would, yes. That is what I am. By saying we've gotten bad at government, the government's gotten really good at being its own thing and keeping us, like, in the dark, squashed under the boot.
The boot? What's the newest here? What's the most recent?
Boot. The Turkish
there's a
coup.
point, at 2015, it's all to present.
This is this year. Well, this is the end of last year. The Turkish coup.
A failed military coup
against Erdogan.
Oh, yeah.
Which, do you know about Fethullah Gulen?
No, tell me.
He's never portrayed as such in the mainstream media, which is, it's one of those stories. But the basic assertion, which I think is, I'm not going to say that it's factual, but the people that I follow and stuff, the people who could back up information, they're definitely, and I would be comfortable.
As you're about to be.
Yeah, but anyway, he's a previous CIA asset,
and
now has a very big house not too far from Langley, Virginia, and basically orchestrates a counter revolutionary group of people inside of Turkey, essentially. And Erdogan used to be an asset as well, but he has turned away in the last couple of years, the network has been active.
Could you look up something else for me on a Google search? That'll be a random segue. Yeah. Can I take us away from this for just half a moment? It's not so unrelated. Google Chapter 13, The Use of Spies. It is Art of War. This is old Sun Tzu, right? If you don't know much about Sun Tzu, he's a pimp. Any one of those would work. Anyway.
Sorry, that was...
I did that thing again.
Yeah, I need the computer to... I need hotkeys that don't do anything in the web browser.
Yeah, the thing I'm going to point us to is that there's a there's a section in here that talks about the different kinds of spies. Here, I'm going to read you the section because this is a fun thing to think about when it comes to look online free stuff. Scroll down a little. This is all just talking about why spies are important. Here we go. Stop.
Those
7.
Guys? Hence the use.
Yes. Okay. Hence the use of spies, of whom there are 5 classes. Local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies. When these 5 kinds of spies are all at work, none can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is the sovereign's most precious facility.
Fuck.
Scroll down. I'm going to read the rest.
Oh my God.
This is awesome as it
This
starts
is amazing.
5. Having local spies means employing the services of the inhabitants of a district. And then there's like a bunch of side notes, so you're hiring local people. Having inward spies is making use of the officials of the enemy. So that's what you'd call operative spies or people in the CIA and whatnot. They pretend to be other people they're not to gain access to stuff. So those are inward spies. 3, having converted spies, which is getting a hold of the enemy's spies and using them for your own purposes. My favorite is having doom spies, which are spies who are doing certain things openly for purposes of deception and allowing our spies to know of them, then report them to the enemy. So I'll explain this really quickly because this is a cool one. Doomed spies are my favorite because essentially it's when you know the enemy has a spy in your rank and you purposefully give them the wrong information. So then they take it back to the enemy and the enemy thinks like, oh, my spy, the spy thinks they're giving legit info. They're like, go west. They're going to flank you from the west. And then you flank from the east
And based
destroyed.
on how they operate on that information, you have a good idea of who that spy actually is.
Was. Yeah, if the information never gets back to the enemy, and that person believes that, then that's not a spy. It's an easy way to find out if someone is a spy in your ranks.
On the world stage, that is theoretically what is going on. Like, all those people are being outed right now. The people who are preventing us from making the next big move.
Exactly.
Things that are happening in the background.
And number 5, surviving spies. Finally, those who bring back news from the enemy camps, which is essentially those that were inner spies and came back. Because inner spies either stay there and keep fucking with them from the inside, or they come back, they bring you information. Anyway, check out Sun Tzu's Art of War.
So I'm going to do the list again. Local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies.
Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff, I mean, this has been at work for thousands of years. The humans have been fucking acting like this. I love Sun Tzu.
This is to me so incredible.
Isn't it great? I knew you would love this kind of shit.
These 5 kinds of spies are all at work. None can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is the sovereign's most precious faculty.
It is.
That's like...
And this is the Art of War. This is chapter 13. So this is deep in the Art of War. He's like, more important than terrain, more important than fighting, more important than politics are spies. Yeah, spies are the most important.
This is like howtokepasecret.com rule number 1. You know?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. The whole book is great. If you read it in this form, don't read all the weird like interpretations. Read like the poetic, like you see how it is here? It's just like a direct translation almost.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's so simple. The Art of War is so simple that it does require some explaining if you don't get what it's talking about. But good stuff. Sun Tzu's fantastic.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of talk about my favorite. How did that not switch? What's up?
Switch back to Samson.
My favorite revolution, the Russian Revolution.
Oh, nice.
Which I shouldn't really say that it's my favorite because I can't really talk about it. But the reason it's my favorite is because it is the story that is parabled in Animal Farm. And Animal Farm is one of my favorite books. I think
it's a great book.
Yeah, that was one of the first real experiences with... I would not be the person I am today.
Without Animal
especially
Farm.
with regard to the information that we really
probably me neither. I would say Animal Farm had that effect on me as a young man because I don't know why they let kids in 7th grade read Animal Farm.
I don't know, but the second that pig started walking on 2 feet, I was like, whoa.
Oh, in the movie you're talking about?
No, in the book.
No, I know in the book, yeah, but that's
just the whole concept, like that whole turning on the people who you came up with.
Oh, right, I forgot that was part of the whole thing. Was there were 4-legged.
4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and then suddenly the pigs, and then that comes into the double speak, and it brings in Orwell again with 1984 of being like they've been telling you this thing the whole time, and then suddenly they're not telling you anymore, and you're like, wait, what's up, bro? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And I'm standing on 2 legs now, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Oh, dude, brilliant. I'm glad that kind of stuff has survived, like a lot. I'm really glad that kind of literature hasn't escaped us.
Yeah.
And it shows how art is really going to be the savior of all this. Because, I mean, you can't approach it with just words. It's got to be something a little more than that.
Yeah. That segues nicely into Fahrenheit 451 and book burning.
Dude, that's like another one of my favorite books too.
And you're thinking like, oh man, that's a really important concept too in terms of like, religions are squashed by squashing information. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you do have access to these books that are giving you this alternative narrative, even if it's not specific history, it's giving you this, like, it's creating that place in your head where you can say, it's entirely possible that this kind of thing goes on. Whereas before you never even would have gone looking for that particular situation, So like if you grow up in a regime, I mean, we're all under that situation, they advertise themselves as the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. In fact, they probably told you that they invented bread, or in the case of Al Gore, pants and the internet.
Yeah.
So they're advertising themselves as like amazing, and then you get to this first thread of information that says they might not be amazing. They might not be. And one of those, and for me, that's books. In 451, you think, oh, it's great that they're not burning books. But then you kind of elevate yourself to another level, and you're like, oh, there's really interesting not burning of books going on.
Yeah.
You know, they're not burning books because some guy wrote a book about burning books and now we can't burn books, but that doesn't mean we can't keep the books out of your hands. You know?
Yep. And
there is a list of banned books.
Yeah, there are.
And then and even above that, it's not like you as the kid could go down to your local library and you could find a book and see it. You know, like no police officer went to the library and went digging through the books under orders and then like made them disappear. They're all there. So you can stumble onto stuff. But when it comes to finding things and like getting recommendations and stuff, that's an information wall that exists. Like you would never know. And so
it shows that people who control information really understand how it spreads. Like they've got if you've ever, there's an economic term called social capital. It's a term I use all the time, and it refers
like
to
street cred.
Kind of. It actually refers to the spread of information, the rate of information spreading. So the higher social capital in an area, the quicker you could say the gossip spreads. But it's not actually gossip. It's like
a meme.
Yeah, it's a meme.
A meme. It is a viscosity to the ability for a meme to fill the volume of space.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what social capital is. But interestingly, I would say it's also street cred. I'd say those are the same phenomenons, because that's why you're more credible on the street, because people are saying your name, mentioning your icon more often. Your meme is spreading. So you gain power, just like a virus does or something. So, but yeah, that's very interesting.
I've got power like a virus.
That's right, baby.
So like, let's more on Animal Farm. Do you remember the horse?
Yeah.
He was always my favorite character. He kind of embodies me a lot. I've always been like the worker. Like I see things going wrong, and I'm like, I could probably say something, but I'll just get back to work.
I have to read it again. I can't.
He was the draft horse, like the Budweiser horse.
Okay,
he was huge and giant, and he worked himself to death. In Slaughterhouse 5, there was a character just like that too.
Yeah.
Who I remember nearing the end, he just getting shittier and shittier jobs, and you just like the book does a very good job of explaining how his body degrades and becomes less able to work, and he literally just works himself to the bone, like very literally. And like I've always identified with those characters. That it's just
don't do that, Sampson.
Well, I mean, you have to grow. That's the whole thing. Like the book introduces you to this thing, and you're like, oh my god, I might be that guy. You know? I might be that guy that works himself to the bone. Thank God this book exists.
I mean, definitely, I identify with the two pigs. For sure. Which doesn't make me feel good about myself, but definitely
is that the original incarnation of pigs, by the way? Is that where that came from? Are cops pigs because of Animal Farm?
No, there's another reason I thought, but that would be fucking G if that was true.
Well, hey, it's a great.
I would call cops pigs and be like, that's what I mean. It's just I don't know. I sometimes I call cops pigs anyway, which maybe I shouldn't, but I don't approve of policing generally, especially with guns for money.
The overseers, the policy enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, I heard, I had a white uncle of mine mention something the other day that was a good point. He said that he thought that a reason a lot of socioeconomic, prejudice and oppression happened in black neighborhoods, aside from all the obviously racist stuff, is that the poorer you are, the less likely you are to own a car, and you can't get an infraction. Like a police officer can't search your body if you're driving a car. It's like a lot harder to fuck with you if you're sitting in, because they have to go through all these traffic rules first. But if you're just like out walking, they can immediately stop you and fuck with your shit. And just people who are walking, taking the bus, tend to be people of color because of the socioeconomic history of America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really unfortunate. That is, in my opinion, one of the many consequences of the fact that what is really going on in the world is a class war, but what is advertised as going on is a race war to keep your mind off of the class war, because
they're intermixed, but it's meant, the purpose is a class war.
It sounds inflammatory to say that black people are more violent, but black people are poorer, and poor people are more violent because you're out there surviving, you know?
I mean, like
the consequences of violence is like, I'm going to eat or I'm not going to eat, you know? So poor people are going to be more violent.
I mean, per capita, if more white people are richer, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can go to poor white ghettos, and you get the same level of violence. It's not a race thing. It never has been a race thing, you know.
Yeah, it's a class thing.
Yeah, and then when you're in that kind of oppressed situation, you feel this responsibility to yourself and the people around you to defend yourself, because you're like pushing out.
Because you're constantly under the stress of the system. Yeah.
Yeah, like the shit's falling down on you, and you're like, get away from me, get off me, I don't want to be touched. Like this is personal space.
And you're around people who are also like that. That's like the dominant culture of the people that you're around because you've just been getting oppressed your whole life. But I mean, and that's where I go back to like, damn, like I am so lucky that I didn't have to deal with a lot of those things. And I don't know, like I've never been oppressed for being Asian. That's for sure. Like Asian Americans have a unique.
You live under the oppression of being assumed smart. It's a good thing you're not dumb.
Right? That's not bad. Yeah, right.
Way to keep up appearances.
I had to keep up appearances. But they did a unique one to Asian Americans, Like the word chink comes from the Transcontinental Railroad, in that they had Chinese slaves, and they would bang on the railroad, so that made that sound. But slavery was in force against Chinese Americans as well. In the same time that the Civil War was going on, Abraham Lincoln built a whole damn railroad with these people. So it's not like there's not actually a history of oppression. It's that it's been socially removed as a context. Yeah. So it's hard to...
But those are financial decisions that are being made, like building the railroad. And the reason they pick Chinese is because they're easily identifiable visually, and then your marketing team can go to work. Chinese people build railroads, and all the people who aren't Chinese are like, thank God we got the Chinese people.
Yeah, you're right.
Because if you were like, sat there and you were like, there's no difference between me and a Chinese person, then you're assuming right there you could be like, I could be forced into building a railroad.
Well, you think that's why, as simple as why they, there's obviously like geopolitical reasons as well, but do you think that's part of the reason Irish and other less easily identifiable white people, or just people that were less in the majority of being blonde and blue-eyed and whatnot, or something like that? What is it? Irish, Jewish, I guess, slightly identifiable in a certain way. I don't know. Yeah, but oppression is a weird one. Prejudice is a weird one. To get back to reflection, like it's just people who are hating on themselves or some incarnation of it.
Mm-hmm. Which brings it back to it's a nice little round off to the Asian Americans and the interesting situation of World War II of being in internment camps.
Yeah.
And many of whom were okay with the situation because they felt so American that they were like, I love my country so much. I respect the fact that they cannot tell the difference visually from the enemy. So
I'll go to the camp.
I'll go in the camp, and that way, me and everyone who looks like me, who might potentially be an enemy, because I'm more interested in the United States' safety than I am in my own. Yeah. And there was plenty of people, lots of documented evidence of that, as much as there is the people who were like suddenly like, wait, I thought this isn't my America. What's going on? How did this happen? Who does this? Yeah. So there was just as many people who were like 100% okay with it right from the get-go, didn't question it. And then in the same way, I always, because there's always the advertised reason. Why did this happen? Yeah. And the history books, and then the history is determined by the winners, as they say.
Yeah.
So like
people who have money.
But you get to this situation and you're like, oh, I don't really trust the history books anymore. So if what they're saying isn't right, what did happen? And in the case of the internment of the Asian Americans for World War II, I think it's a culture shock to impress upon the people what is that it's really important. Like, listen, you wouldn't do this thing if it wasn't serious, bro.
Right.
This is how serious we are.
This is like a final step.
This is how, because
that's where fear gets you.
Yeah.
That's the value of fear, is telling people like, no. I get you're not against it, but we have to do it now or you're going to die. What are you going to do, bro?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well then I'm going to shoot you, because if I don't do this thing, we're all going to die.
It's him or me.
Yeah. So that's that mentality. It takes over. It's contagious. And also it's the main function of our media. So love and peace, and don't be afraid of stuff, not even fear.
Did we go? Oh yeah, okay. So back to the word pig and pot cops, because I did look this up, and two things. Starting around the 16th century, pig began being used in English as a derogatory term for people in general, police or not. And it took about 3 centuries, but this particular insult inevitably became a popular nickname for oft-insulted police officers. This is great, with the first documented reference to this being in the Dictionary of Buckish Slang, University Wit, and Pickpocket Eloquence, published in London in 1811. That's a book I need to get my hands on.
What is the line? The line in it, the pertinent line in question is, the pigs frisked my panty and nailed my screws, meaning the officer searched my house and seized my picklocks.
What's a picklock?
A screw.
What's a screw in this? Like, why is that important? Why do they have people?
Because he's like a thief. Like, you're a thief who opens locks often. Which I imagine was probably a lot easier in 1811.
Oh, you think that's the spoils of his lockpicking?
No, I think it's probably his picklocks. It's some like the
they took his things.
Took his picklocks.
Okay,
yeah, they're like, you're a fucking thief.
Okay,
these are lockpicks.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's why I was thinking lockpicks and not.
Yeah,
picklocks.
so there's no like particular for the pig reference. Yeah, I think it's just it's a reference to something. I don't want to dehumanize anybody ever, you know, and I dislike certain things, so I express myself. But the truth is, like, I love all human beings, and most police officers I've met, even though I'm very affluent and have access, not very affluent, I'm rather affluent, have access to a certain level of respect that affluent people get, I guess, from agents of the state, like police officers. Seem like nice people to me. But I've also met plenty of them that are very aggressive and take part in this culture, but not to me. I've seen them be very aggressive to other people, mostly people darker than me. Mostly people who don't speak like I do. Don't have the whiter tongue, you could say.
Yeah, I recently remember hearing a story of somebody who had said, you have one of those too, where like they were kind of questioning, and then you open your mouth and they immediately were at ease.
Oh, yeah. Because
you were like, they're like, oh, he talks like a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
In the 4 days I spent in jail, one of the guys was like, why do you talk like a book?
Why do you talk like a book?
Yeah. Which is like one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that's a real moment of self-reflection. You know, when the people in the room with really small vocabularies choose a very small vocabulary way to describe your large vocabulary, you know?
Why are you talking like a book?
Yeah, except it was more urban than that. I wasn't in the country.
You suddenly got transported
I weren't in the country.
Yeah. Well, you were. It's just a different kind of country.
Yeah, I totally adopted that piece of slang. Like people,
book. You were speaking like a book.
I apologize for my vernacular. I talk like a book.
I don't think you talk like a book.
Well, yeah, but you read.
You talk like an engineer. I don't read a lot of books.
I do talk like an
engineer. You're assuming that. I don't read a lot of books at all. Nope.
Come on.
Nope. I could tell you.
All you have to do is get in a car accident at 14 and suddenly you're a genius with no books.
I don't read any books. No, fuck books. I'm not a genius. I don't know anything. You can't be a genius and know anything.
I don't read books.
I read books.
I was walking down the street the other day and I picked up a card on the ground, and here it is, advertising chapter 13 of Sun Tzu's Art of War. I didn't even know that. Except 3 days ago. I accidentally found out.
Sometimes I read books that like I find interesting online or something, but I don't. It's not like a practice. I would say I do at least 50 other things more than I read books.
Well, I read a lot of books, and it's nowhere near the top of the list of things I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Where would you rank it? Just time spent reading books.
I'm like maybe 5 books a year.
Okay. Maybe what percentage of your life is reading books? Waking life.
3-4 hours a week.
So that's a percentage. That's like 5% or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, mine is like under 1 for sure.
Like that same amount in a month.
Like 1? No, like a year. I read like a book a year.
What would you consider your knowledge base? Where did you get you from?
I didn't get me from anywhere. I'm the one who got it.
Yeah, you and your esoteric crap.
Yeah, it's true. It's true though. I don't have to.
But
I just download shit.
You're embodying like the physical part of you exists, and in that same argument, that same space of thought, you are the world around you. So like, where were your information sources? Like we know you're bigger than you, but
I use the internet a lot. But what do you mean? I mean, like a lot of it. You know what? A lot of it's orally transferred. Like people that I cut it up with, just like I'm cutting it up with you right now. Sometimes I'll look some of that information up and confirm it, but usually it's not from books. Sometimes, like if I really don't know anything, I'll go and I'll watch a YouTube video, or I'll like Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent. I didn't really get it. Like I understood, like, oh shit, they can control the way that we consume information, but didn't really get the mechanisms. Oh, there's a great video if you're ever online and want to watch. It's called the five filters of mass media.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
That's from Noam Chomsky's manufacturing of consent, and it's great. And it's all of this is based on the PR guru of the 1920s, Edward Bernays, who's the cousin of Sigmund Freud.
Oh, if that's who I think we're talking about, I'm looking him up.
Yeah, Edward Bernays was a brilliant PR guy who essentially found out that he wrote a paper or something. He called it the engineering of consent, and manufacturing of consent is a reflection on that from Noam Chomsky. But this guy, Edward Bernays, was the hero of PR. He's the father of PR, and creepy stuff he would talk about. Invented several different agencies, like the one, what do you call, selling to kids? Was a market that they didn't have before. So they invented a marketing scheme called nagging, where he realized that you couldn't sell stuff to kids because kids didn't have money, but you can sell stuff to kids in a way that gets them to nag their parents, and it's genius, but it's fucked up.
Yeah, it's rough. It speaks to two things, like just general exploitation of children, and then kind of weakness as a parent. No offense to parents out there, because there is a point when you just give in. Like I don't fault anyone for that particular situation. Interestingly, I grew up in kind of the opposite. My parents were so emphatically no about everything. I wanted for nothing. But when it came to like TV and the things that the TV is trying to sell you and stuff, and I had like very low sugar intake. I wasn't constant. I got a bounty at Christmas and stuff. But I wasn't getting the latest action figures. Like I wasn't participating in popular culture in a material way that would, like, I couldn't ask my parents for, hey, this is a thing that I like and I want a representation of that in my life. They would just say no.
I 100% had that, and it fucked my body up. Seriously, I have these like little fat lipoma things. I don't have many of them. I have like 2 or 3, but I know it's from eating Hot Pockets. I know it's from Hot Pockets and pizza rolls and 32 racks of Mountain Dew, and I don't remember this stuff really well, which is maybe a testament to like it being almost like a drug-induced state of kind, but also a car accident. But video games, the whole nine. My parents were very supportive. I feel very lucky that I got through all that and ended up being this person. Because I feel like I know a lot of people, who are like old school friends of mine. Not like a lot, but definitely some who, have drank Rockstar energy drinks every day since they were 12, and their teeth are rotting and cracking, and
yeah, and that actually being in the club industry.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you see that in different forms of drugs.
Oops.
I'm back. He's back.
Oh, I'm doubled up. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, so that was a quick side note. Being in the club industry where, Red Bull's a big thing.
Red Bull.
Anecdotally, energy drinks, like among the managers, have all learned not to drink it because it fucks with your feet. Like, this is a job where you have to be on your feet all the time, and if you have like an addictive return to Red Bull type of thing, a Red Bull habit, it fucks with your feet, and you're like, people, all these managers are like, oh, my feet hurt so much.
Really?
My feet, I've got feet problems. And then some person like quit drinking an energy drink, and like my feet feel better. And then it spread like wildfire, and everyone's like, don't drink energy drinks, it makes your feet fucked up, you can't walk. And then there's 2 people at my office who have the worst diets I've ever seen, and the health consequences I see in them that feels to me like there's one guy I work with has 0 intake of nutrients. I've never seen him eat a vegetable, and he admittedly has never eaten a vegetable ever. It's like meat and cheese and wheat would be like the extent of his, and he grows. He has this crazy condition. It's like 1 in 250,000 people, and he just grows like crazy tumors, not cancerous, but just like tissue of like anything, hair, teeth, like one of those crazy tumors you hear about.
You are very literally what you eat.
Yeah, and one of the other guys in the other side of the business, he's pretty much falling apart. It's kind of the same story for him. So
yeah, what's your diet like, Sampson?
It's honestly as bad as it's ever been, because I have a normal job, so it's up to me to like go out and seek that for myself, whereas I used to work in a restaurant, so I had a giant stocked refrigerator and I was in control of what food was coming in. So I ate like very little packaged food for like the last 10 years. And I basically do that now, but the hard part is like I'm always on the go and run, so I tend to be like quick fix stuff, and I have a hard time getting my nutrient content, but I'm trying to I compensate by juicing. I'll go buy like $100 worth of vegetables and just crank out a quart, 2 quarts,
that's great,
half a gallon, and then just let it sit in the fridge, because that's
I'm still getting there.
Good stuff.
I'm still getting there. Like, I feel like you're way healthier than me physically in that way, because I like I've been really healthy the last year, maybe. I don't know about that. I'm getting better. I'm like really learning my total change in diet. But it affects your health a lot. I was vegetarian for financial reasons more than anything. When I for 2 years when I was most broke, starting my business and stuff, and after 3 years of that, my gums started bleeding. I got like really intense physical symptoms, and someone told me like you're not feeding yourself, like your body's dying because you're not paying attention to it. Like there was a while where like all I ate was cheese quesadillas and tomato soup because it was so cheap and I could get so much of it at once. But you can't run on that. So now I'm finally coming through that, and I feel like my body is just detoxing like a lifetime of poor habits.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially alcoholism too. Definitely
it's interesting to be on opposite sides of that fence, because we were talking about the commercial culture, and my parents were just like, no. So when I watched TV as a kid, I was watching these commercials that were advertising like, hey kid, wouldn't you love this thing? And instead of, because there was no chance I was getting it, I already knew that was a hard fact for me. So it was good for my parents to like lay that down, because they don't realize how much time they save themselves. Because I'm one of those people who's just like, okay, I just took it. That's a hard fact. But then I'm sitting here watching TV all the time. So now I'm watching the cartoons, the commercials, and I can't think about how much I want it, or what I would do if I had it. I'm not engaging in the commercial in its original intention. So my brain naturally says, what are they trying to sell me? How are they trying to sell it to me? And I had this very early on, I was like watching the production of the commercial as a thing that someone does, like a craft. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting how they highlighted Spider-Man's whatever right there. Million examples. But I definitely was like thinking about commercial culture at a very young age. I was not rebelling against it like I have been since I hit 20s, basically since I discovered local radio with no commercials. And I was like, why do I feel so good? Yeah. Which brings it back to, I grew up on a pretty healthy diet. It wasn't terrible, but school lunch, I cleaned my plate every day. And it was like, we did have a decent cafeteria, so you were mostly engaging with the food pyramid. I
ate chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes.
Yeah, and like my mom, there was a lot of home cooked meals. Holidays were always big home cooked meals. So I grew up in good shape, and I kind of got exposed. Like when I got old enough to get out of the house, riding a bike, get out of the house. I mean, like young teenager or whatever. And you have maybe you've got a little bit of an allowance. You got a couple bucks. You can hit the 7-Eleven. Yeah, you can hit the. Well, I lived in a small town, so there was literally a grocery store and 3 restaurants. There was a McDonald's, of course.
That'll affect the way you grow up nutritionally too.
Yeah, I definitely ate plenty of McDonald's growing up, but I was exposed to like bad stuff later. So that stuff came into me at a point when I was old enough to think about, okay, I'm putting this into me, or like it takes a while for them to make the connection, but you eat your cheeseburger and then a little bit later you're like, I don't really feel as good as I used to. And at some point you make that connection with, oh, that was the food inside. That was bad food inside of me that makes me feel bad. But I definitely had this realization at some point where, and that the same goes for like basically like medication and pills and stuff. Like I have zero input of pills and medication. Like
food is medicine.
I could count the number of pills I've taken on 2 hands in the last decade. Yeah. Like, and it's ibuprofen and like 2 weeks of
I couldn't tell you the last time I took a pill. The last time I took a pill, it was an iron nutrient gummy bear. That's the closest thing to a pill I've consumed.
Bouncing
in the last.
Here and there and everywhere.
There you go.
But yeah, so like I had this impression. I did this thing one time when I was like, wow, people must feel really bad all the time, because I started behaving like them and I immediately felt bad. And I'm looking at these people who've spent their whole lives like that. And I'm like, that's incredible. They have no idea what it's like to feel good. They're looking at me, they're being like, I'm like, how do you feel today? And they're like, I feel pretty good. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking they're probably about my 6 and they think they're at a 10.
Yeah, physically, definitely. Yeah, that definitely happens.
That's an incredible thing I was exposed to.
Yeah.
A complete lack of suffering that I was exposed to.
Yeah.
And a complete lack of perspective. But also, it is perspective.
Yeah.
In a way, it makes me an interesting person. But on the other hand, like, it's not suffering,
It's not suffering, but it's, there has to be both, So I think if you can, try not to judge yourself or anything that is or isn't anything. Because both, they arise mutually, right? The reason that there's oppressed folks is because they're those of us who have access to the rewards of oppression, which is sad on a certain level, but also how the world works. It's how nature works, right? In order for the predator to have food, it's got to eat the thing that it's preying on.
Yeah, but there's an interesting what would you call that? A loophole in nature where there's not suffering, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a very interesting thing. So like you,
I mean, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of pain and suffering in nature.
Yeah, but it's what it appears to you. You're projecting that. Like,
you're right.
If you actually
I don't know if the antelope is really.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. So, you know, if you want a kill shot on an animal because if it's dying, if it senses that it's dying, it gets stressed out, that sours the meat.
Yeah.
Right? So you as a hunter, you want a shot straight through the heart. You want to drop them as fast as possible because you don't want any like the toxins of panic running through the blood and souring the meat.
Okay.
And that's like, that doesn't really occur. It turns out they've done studies. It doesn't really occur in the wild. There's a point where like the animal's like, oh God, I'm being killed. You know, I'm about to be someone else's food.
It's probably panicking because it just doesn't know what the fuck is going on.
Well, there's a trigger. They've a mental stimulus thing that they can measure and detect, and the animal just goes limp. Like, okay, this is life. This is what happens.
Really?
Yeah, and it goes, ugh, and like, okay, this is the point where I need to stop fighting. It's okay, I'm dying.
I guess that's fair. Also, like, it's seen that it's lived in a world where like its friends have gotten eaten by a tiger one time or something like that. So if like if it's in front of a tiger, its brain or its response system of whatever knows what's going on. If it gets shot out of nowhere and it's not dying, it's like this pain came out of nowhere and what's going on.
Yeah, so that is an interesting, like, other than being surprised and torn to the ground by someone who got too close. The idea of like a bullet is a very foreign situation.
Yeah.
You know, like I just got taken out from a long ways away, which is kind of interesting. Okay, this is going to be a good tie-in because we can start closing it up. We just hit the hour 10 mark.
I love tacos.
Which
that made me
really
hungry.
Fast.
Yeah.
Like the first hour was amazing, and it didn't seem that fast, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And this, I was just like, we're kind of chatting away, and it just blew past. But
yeah,
anyway.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Going back to, we talked about indigenous technologies, you know, and I want to close with the evolution idea, and like let's keep the sustainable practices, and keep the
technology as well.
Yeah,
if it's possible.
Let's be indigenous and have the internet. And in the hunting situation, praying over your food has a measurable effect on the food. Like if you pray over if you cook yourself a meal, you pray over it, it is measurably healthier. Like more nutrients survive the cooking process or whatever. And if you pray over your prey, P-A-Y over your E-Y, you've just shot an antelope, right? And you approach the animal, the very indigenous practice of like, oh, thank you very much for your gift to me and my sustainability of my family, and I will return all of your effort and your life force back into the world around me. This is the circle of life kind of stuff. Like that has a measurable effect on the quality, you and the meat and like everything about the whole situation, and the spirit, the passing of the spirit, you know, like it's a major tenet of their belief system as well, is like, I'm helping the spirit pass on, you know, I'm completing the circle of life on a spiritual level, not just physical level. It isn't about me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is a really interesting aspect of that whole situation, and that's what's missing. So like we're gonna keep the spiritual aspect and the internet.
Yeah.
So to close up the show, I wanted to talk about, like, instead of revolving, we don't want to go back and repeat. We want to move forward, but there are things that we want, you know. So I want we'll do a quick list and try and think of something that matches that situation in each one. So like
a future that would be like that.
And we've talked about medicine. So like let's keep the
so
let's keep the arm replacing surgery crazy, like, you know, heart transplant. Let's keep the transplant, but let's lose the pills.
Yeah, I would say for medicine
let's regain the herbology.
Yeah, I would say let's keep the instruments. All the tools are fine. Yeah. And get rid of the profit making. Because I think that if you took profit out and the objective was genuinely to make people healthier, pills just would naturally go away because they're just not as effective. But they can be. So maybe there are times where it's effective, but I'd say take profit out of it. So keep the tools, lose the profit, right? We can just share this stuff. What else is there? Politics, right? In terms of politics and state, keep the democracy for whatever there is, but keep the sense of democracy, lose the politicians.
Yeah. And the terms like return to the indigenous, let's regain the council of grandmothers.
Yeah, let's regain respect for our elders and lose the old white people. No, I'm joking. They
and a return to the sacred feminine as a tribal
old
leader.
white men in particular is what I was referencing. But yes, definitely a mixed, diverse sense of leadership from our elders. I think very important.
Food.
Let's keep our communities and keep our distribution lines in a way.
Let's lose the monoculture,
and let's lose the simplicity. And I'm gonna diversify it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say let's regain the labor.
Let's regain the labor.
Because that's one of those things. Like everyone talks about jobs, and I'm like, if you really want to put jobs back,
everybody should grow their own food.
Yeah, it not even doesn't have to be your own food, but you like a real working synergistic farm. And the reason you don't,
we could all grow one thing.
Yeah, the reason you don't,
so much.
Well, you can't only grow on one thing.
I know, but I'm just saying.
But it's because there are plant relationships.
Right, you are building an ecosystem,
and there are plant relation. There's a relationship with the soil. There's a relationship with the bugs. There's a relationship. So growing one plant, even on a small scale, is
grows
not
a bunch
wise.
of things.
At the very least, you should grow two. Like what is it? Beans and corn. The beans grow up the corn, and they keep away some sort of bug that doesn't like beans but does like corn.
Yeah.
Those relationships exist everywhere.
Ecosystems work this way. So I would say on the whole, keep the system, lose the economic, and so I would say keep the ecosystem, but lose all the other made up conceptual shit in between. It's not necessary. Education. Keep the drive, keep the reasoning, like we want to help kids and kids are the future, and keep it the justification.
I'll even give them a 1 point for keep the availability.
Sure.
It's pretty easy to find yourself inside of a school. The quality of that school is definitely in question.
Yeah, so
but if you want to go to school, for the most part, you can go to school.
Keep the intention, lose the dogma. That's going to be number one for education.
Which I think
you can't teach people things as if what you're teaching them is right, as if it was like delivered from the mouth of God.
Yeah.
And this is the truth.
Which was always my problem with English.
It's everyone's problem with all educational systems, unless you're good at following the rules, in which case maybe you make more money than me.
That's a statistically significant conclusion, I would suggest.
Yeah. All right, let me do one for you. How about banks?
All right, so I'll say keep the currency, as in the flow, because that's what you want things to flow.
The energetic exchange of stuff.
The basic idea is there. What you want to toss out is the predatory aspects of it, and the kind of like in the terms of flow, we're talking about the river and eddy currents and things. So you have these things where like they're cycling it, they're keeping it amongst themselves. And if you think of it genetically, actually, there's a parable of like self-destruction built into genetics, where if you're having sex with too close, first, second cousin, you're bound to see some poor output, genetically speaking. And I think that exists in money, right? So if you have too tight-knit of a group and you're exchanging money only with each other,
is sort of corrupted.
Yeah, you're charging each other interest type of thing. Yeah. You can get to too small of a situation and it will be self-destructive. And I think actually we're going to experience that in the next year.
Remove the predatory aspect, keep the flow.
Yeah, and then what would let's pull something from the past as well.
Okay.
Like what an ancient practice.
We should do the opposite. Some ancient practices that are important. Rituals, number one, in my book, that needs to be returned. It actually already exists. It's just, it's hidden. Yeah. It's hidden in ways people don't know. The evening news is a form of magic ritual, right? It's like a surmised storytelling recap. I mean, how many rituals are just stories while you do something fancy? I mean,
I want to do a whole show on enchanting, like being enchanted, and the repetition, basically. And that's where media, and we should do media.
Let's bring a hypnotist in to talk, because I know hypnotists that can say shit to you, and your brain can't process what they're saying because it's like magic. It's crazy.
That's great. That sounds amazing. Yeah, we're doing that for sure. Okay, media. Keep, toss, and regain.
Keep, toss, regain. Okay. Keep freedom of information. Keep access to information. That's important. It's not perfect, but
it's a concept, and not an actualized reality.
Yeah, keep the concept of freedom of information. Toss. I'm going to say dogma again, but what else could I say? Toss. Conformity. Toss conformity. If the point of media isn't to conform, if it's not like, hey, what's popular? Let's do the popular thing. If somehow the coolest thing could be the not popular thing, then I don't know what culture would become. Like, I don't know what what would happen to the
nerds kind of stand on top of the world these days. So that is
reason.
happening. I would agree very much so. And then we need to regain something. What an ancient technology? In a way, to me, that makes like, let's regain paper and pencil, or like, let's not lose paper and pencil completely because it's a medium and it will become like just an art. I think, paper and pencil will only be represented in art, even if it's words.
I'd say stories. Try and keep the stories.
Oral traditions. Yeah. Actually, that goes back to sacred stuff. That's I think that's super important as well.
Got to keep the stories. All right, final one. Let me do one for you. What about... what about government do we keep? Like governing.
Nothing?
Yeah, I know that's hard for me.
I mean, I'm going towards things like, okay, again, we need to regain wisdom, which I heard this quote the other day. Wisdom is the action upon knowledge. So like we have all the knowledge we need.
We're not doing shit about it.
But we are not wise enough to enact upon it. What would you keep?
Of the governing
I mean, like the basic, the self, the reason they justify themselves to exist.
Like autonomy, kind of?
Well, they justify their own existence with words that they're making, it's the classic politician make promises and then break them.
But I'm not even talking about politicians. I'm talking about like any governing structure.
I know, but like
what do you keep?
They say this is when you say, why do you exist, government? Why do you exist? And he'll tell you why he exists. And what he says is not true, but that's what you want to hear. And that's because that's
part of the point of why they exist too, is to tell you what you hear. So ironically, you're also getting what you asked for. What do you keep? I would say keep the concept that government should be helpful. That the concept that we should be helpful for each other. That's what it is.
Here's a good play on words. Let's keep the peace.
Yeah. With the peace and the sharing. The concept that sharing is part of what government should do. I think that's definitely something to hold up. Like if you're in a village, right, and you're in an indigenous tribe, there's this like old myth that like they killed the most deformed babies, and for some places that's provable and true. But I bet you there are probably way more examples of like caring for the elderly and those who were lost a foot when a tiger got to them or something like that, because they cared about each other and they knew each other and they loved each other. So I'd say keep the caring about each other and sharing stuff, and then toss the the government part that I say toss is the idea that certain people should have more stuff than others, that they deserve more stuff than others. And that government is supposed to be the police of
that. Having more stuff is an inherent credibility and allows you the opportunity to have more stuff.
Yeah, that's not great. I'd say get rid of that.
The measure of a man is not his stuff.
No, it's not.
Which is an interesting point. Like the law, our law, this Western version of law does have that built into it. Like,
protects people with stuff. Yeah.
Well,
what did you explain today, Sampson?
Nothing.
Yeah. Me too. Me neither? I don't know.
Well, the people at home, let me put me up here. I want to point at people. Hello, people. This has been Nothing Explained. As you can see on your screen, if you're watching on a screen, my Twitter handle is Nothing Explained. There's no E there, so Nothing Explained.
And I am Illuminati. I'm actually Ryan Foo. I'm actually not Ryan Foo, but Illuminati is a word.
Neither of us have any idea who we are.
Nope.
In the course of making this podcast, maybe we will and maybe we'll not find out who it is we are. But I can goddamn for sure tell you that nothing will have been explained. Hey, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed what we're doing. This has been episode 1.
It has been episode 1.
We do have episode 0.
This one's much better.
Yeah, I would say we did the actual basic, although I will admit, you hopefully will not know this. Anyone watching live knows this, but our audio and our video is not synced because I forgot to put the delay on the audio.
It's all right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, so we'll have to, before it goes live, we're going to fix that. But that's an easy fix. So
easy fix.
I feel good. I feel really good. Not to mention, let's give a shout out back to Mr. Fury.
Yes, Mr. Lucifuri, Theo Wilson.
Yeah, who made the first hour just fucking epic.
Incredible.
So good.
Hard to follow.
I love that people like that exist.
Yeah, we're gonna talk to lots of them. They are Denver. Joy. That's the other thing to plug in here.
Yeah.
This is not just a random occasion by which we are sitting down. This is part of a larger collective. This is We Are Denver, because we are Denver. So thank you guys so much for being with us.
Yeah. Hashtag We Are Denver.
Hashtag We Are Denver.
And we'll see you next time. Oh, I will say, we've aimed for bi-monthly. I think that's a good goal.
Yeah.
So we're not doing anything next week, but that is
bi-weekly, you mean?
I will be in Joshua Tree for Contact in the Desert. So I'm gonna go.
So
I'm gonna go see a UFO.
Can you bring back photos and media, and can we talk about aliens when you come back?
Yeah, let's just do it. Like that'll be a great tie-in. We'll just do a whole alien show. I mean,
Awesome.
there will be a lot of video taken there, but there's so much.
Take your own stuff so we can get some of your own stories from the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna go stand on a bluff with people staring at the sky for like all of Saturday night with night vision
until something
goggles.
happens.
Last
Something
year
always happens?
there was nothing. There was never a time when something wasn't happening.
What?
Yeah.
That's so
That's what I'm saying.
tight. I want to go.
You get a confluence of people who, speak the universal language of love, and they show up to hang out with you. Like all the UFO dudes, everybody says they're like, well, the more jovial, happy, jokester, fucking goofy you get, the better chance you're having of some supernatural experience when you go out looking for UFOs at night. So
it should be like a silly thing to do. Cool.
All right, let's call it. And big up to Ghost House Recording.
Big up to Ghost House
hosting us. We'll see you on the other side.